Hey Salem, here we are again. This is William Legault from Salem Digest. We're again at the studios of Salem Access Television here on Derby Street, interviewing candidates whose names will appear on the ballot on the 14th of September in the preliminary election. And today we have a Ward 2 candidate running for that open seat, Jim Zavaglia. Jim, welcome. Thanks for coming in.
Well, Billy, thank you for having me in. And actually, I'll have to tell you that I hear a good response whenever you do one of your videos, and you do a great service for the city of Salem and the people of Salem.
I love it when I get props. So, Jim, what happened to your foot? What'd you do? You got a boot on here.
Okay, well, here's the situation. One of the actual reasons, and I'll tell you some of the other reasons why I was running, is I had got some work on my other foot just before COVID, and unfortunately, everything closed down. Now, waiting to try to get, some help for this, but I've actually talked to my doctors, talked with my particular, doctors involved, and they basically said, I said I wanted to run, and they said, well, tell you what, as long as you do pretty good, gave me exercises, told me what to do, as long as you can, might as well use it as your rehab. So in case I had to go for it, they check it out and see if they need anything else. Fine, there's no problem with that. So then what happened is, sure, that foot's all perfect now. Unfortunately, this other one, as I was been going around, walking around and talking to people and, doing the campaign things, unfortunately, I kind of misstepped a little bit. And, I think I wasn't paying quite attention. I was probably looking down at my notes and everything, and all of a sudden I felt a little, I think I might have sprained it a little bit. So what had happened was I ended up going to see the doctor again. They said, yeah, it looks like you did a little bit of spraying and stuff like that, but since you're walking around, they gave me a walking cast. Gave me again some exercise and things like that to do. So I'm battle worn and wary for going to try to represent the people of Ward 2.
Wounded in action on the campaign trail.
Well, I know that's happened before with some other candidates years ago when I'd be working on other campaigns, and there were a couple of them that the same thing kind of happened to them. So I feel like I've joined a club because they were all elected. So maybe that's good luck.
Well, there you go. So this is not your first run for elector's office, Jim. You've done it before. So the question I have, and not just for this one, but from when you ran before, why would you do this to yourself? Why would you put your name on the ballot?
Well, I think I first ran in '97 for the Ward 3 councilor. And at the time, I saw how the council was there seemed to be not quite a good direction. And, people were just kind of not kind of getting along. So I figured, since I'd lived all my life in the city and I pretty much know all the issues, because again, I've worked on campaigns since I've been 9 years old. So I figured I'd throw my hat in, see where it went, and see if they could help make a difference. Same thing when I ran in 1999. Again, the council, it seemed to be getting a little worse. So again, I jumped in, and actually at the time, people were telling me because of Ward 3, because I lost, they said, geez, you should run for councilor at large. So I figured next time out, 1999, I'd run for councilor at large. Got a nice response. I was actually only about 300-400 votes behind the fourth place person. So I also felt at that time too I could try to make some sort of difference. I tried to introduce some ideas, and actually they end up getting they end up taking my ideas and actually running with them. So, which was good because sure, I wish I would have got some credit, but that's what it would happen years ago on the council. If some citizen came up and they gave them a good idea, they would actually publicly laud them in the council meeting, and send some sort of letter saying thank you for your idea. And I figure a lot of people, what I've seen going around and knocking on doors, is they don't feel like they're being heard. And I want to be able to say that I heard from this person. I'd be more than happy to stand up and say, look, they gave me the idea. I'm more than happy to let them know that they get the credit for it. So essentially, I'm just basically trying to help and trying to make a better life for everybody in the Ward 2 and the city of Salem.
Fair enough. Now, Ward 2 is a pretty interesting ward. It covers a lot of the B5, just about the entire B5, plus Federal Street area, part of the Chestnut Street area, and of course, Bridge Street Neck. So, Bridge Street Neck. The zoning on Bridge Street Neck is, at best, could be best described as a hodgepodge. You have basically almost every type of zoning that's possible to put in Salem is right along that short stretch of Bridge Street Neck. If you look at the map, it's every color except for one. I think we don't have the big commercial, the PUDs or the the big commercial zoning overlay down there. What do you think about that zoning? Do you think it's time to update it, or do you like it the way it is?
Well, I'll tell you, I remember it way back when. I mean, and you too, how basically with the old bridge, how it was actually one of the gateways into Salem. So I always remember it as always being a whole bunch of different businesses on there, and old family businesses too. I mean, of course, we always had Kuzma's Market there for years and years and years.
It's a new market there now.
Yeah, and again, and I've seen it change hands several times. I mean, I go get my hair cut at Killy's on Bridge Street and go to Stashia's next door to get a sandwich, for lunch. And just going to the other different businesses that were down there. I mean, heck, the old Howard Johnson's. I barely remember the Howard Johnson's. Of course, the Waikiki, now it's 99. And I know for a fact for the longest time, too, before the gas company took it over, where the gas company is right now, though, behind 99.
Yeah.
That's that used to be the old fairgrounds. So
that's going way back.
Oh, because I began talking to some of my relatives, my mother, my father, and some of my other older relatives. They used to tell me stories about the old Salem too. So I think what happens is, unfortunately, or fortunately for that matter, is right now some people are saying it seems to work. Other people are kind of not saying it's working. I think what happens is we should just kind of take a look at it. It's got to be a constant process. Say something does go out and say they want to try to do something else. It's got to be a constant process. It's got to try to maintain the area vibrant, because it's still technically a gateway into the city. And a lot of people, use it every day. But the thing is, it's also going to be consideration that it has to be like smart development and maybe responsible development too. So I would actually try to go, and I would actually, again, as I said before, some people said they don't feel like they were, being heard. I would more than happy to go knocking on the doors on people. I know people don't like to do surveys, but, knock on the doors on some people and say, well, listen, neighborhood groups also, and say, what do you really want to do? What do you think? What do you remember from years ago? What worked, what didn't? Really have it pretty much all-inclusive. And of course, working with the council and the mayor, too, to try to, maintain it as, a vibrant place, but also at the same time, if we need to change things, fine, you could do individual zoning changes if you needed to. So you use the term development. Yeah. Good development. Mm-hmm. Smart development. Responsible, too.
Responsible development. And they've all become buzzwords. Mm-hmm. We're all about buzzwords these days. Those have all become buzzwords. Tell me what you think would be smart development along Bridge Street from, we'll say, Webb Street to the bridge.
The bridge, well, I see there is some residential there, and I know they replaced a few businesses with other businesses there. But what could happen is, say some of the businesses do go out, and you could possibly make some residential. The thing is, you got to make sure you have parking, but also number two, if you're going to have a spot, you may only be able to put 4 units there, but don't put 10, 12 units, because then that's actually with the whole city. You have a problem with infrastructure. You have a problem with the water. You have a problem with the sewer. You have a problem with electricity. I know for a fact that the last time they had a true water main coming into Salem was 1901. And so if you keep doing more and more development, you have a problem where how you're going to have to be able to upgrade the infrastructure somehow, or else no one's going to get any water. The electricity, no one's going to be getting any electricity, or they will. It'll be at a low voltage. And it's just, and also sewer. I mean, you don't want the sewers to back up. That's not a good thing. But I think on something going along Bridge Street, again, it's kind of difficult because the way it's been for so long, and some people are quite happy with it, some people isn't. That's why that one has to be under constant review. To see if it'll work or not.
So now you go further down Bridge Street, where it has basically been undeveloped for a long time, with the exception of the new senior center down there.
Yeah.
We're still waiting for the state and the feds to come in and give final approvals for the stretch that goes from the overpass to Flint Street. Mm-hmm. What would you like to see along there? Was there any, you got that old, what's now the FW Webb parking lot, the city parking lot. And you got the little automotive place. What would you like to see down in that area?
Well, one of these situations, there was a few years ago, they had a situation where I talked to people on River Street, and they wanted to put some things in, but they were also having a problem with what would happen with contaminated soil and that sort of thing. And you don't want to do anything to disturb the things or do it, again, in a good, environmentally safe way so that it doesn't affect a lot of the people where it's in that particular area. Also, as you're going down, as you said, as the Life Center, the church Life Center, but then again, that was the old Sylvania that used to be on there too. And I know they've been trying to figure out for years and years what to be able to do. Fine, I could see some sort of development down there, but again, don't overdevelop. You see the signs all over Salem about overdevelopment. You can't, unfortunately, you had a situation years ago, say like a Chelsea or Medford or other cities around Boston that they did overdevelop. And you end up having a problem where you end up having urban sprawl. And it doesn't quite look that nice when going down there in some neighborhoods. Some neighborhoods are great, other neighborhoods aren't quite as good. But the thing is it has to be responsible so that sure, you want to bring new people in, you want to be able to provide housing and affordable housing for people. But at the expense of trying to cram too much in, it's like, as I was talking with some people, they're saying it's like putting a gallon of water in a quart container.
I've heard that used, but using much cruder terms.
Well, of course, I'm editing it, of course, for the audience.
Viewing, yes.
Of course. I mean, that's the whole thing. But again, a lot of the people, a lot of people love Salem, even people that have just moved in here. I mean, they really like this. They really like the city, and a lot of times they'll say, "Look, it's easier because I can get down to Boston," which a lot of people have to admit. Boston is basically the cultural hub, so to speak. We have our own culture up here, but they do like it here. They say, of course, the traffic isn't quite the best in the world, but still, as long as they're able to, you have the public transportation. A lot of them, you see now the trend to go more towards public education, bikes, and things like that too.
So we're going to kind of stick with Bridge Street for a while because it really is kind of an important, the conversation's there. You got a new project proposed for the Crescent Lot, which is technically Ward 6. Yeah. But it's right at abuts Ward 2. They're looking at a pretty tall structure there. Now it's down in a recessed area, but they're looking at a pretty tall structure. Each end of Bridge Street, how high do you think would be acceptable for a structure to go up on Bridge Street neck as opposed to a structure down on the other end of Bridge Street?
Well, I think it's a situation where, again, now this is where you have to get the state, the feds, and people involved. What are the actual laws? How high is it? And also neighborhood input. I mean, you want to have a big, huge tower. It's the situation again. Now we talk about infrastructure. There are always problems. Whatever you put in, people aren't going to like it, of course. Some people. Other people are going to like it. Some people are going to be, what's going on, what's going to happen with the infrastructure. You have some very, very, very intelligent and very well-informed people. And again, as I've seen as I'm going around talking about some of this stuff, in fact, some of them actually inform me of some things I really didn't know about, and I appreciate the input. And I was able to go back and research it so I could, get a better handle of what they were talking about. I had some knowledge of it, but some people are very in-depth about this too. So, I mean, I think maybe possibly towards the bridge, you might want a shorter structure because, again, the way it's always been kind of low, and it's always been, nice coming in. I know they also tried to work on there for a little bit to try to, make it a little more pleasing, trees and, make it look a little better, greener and things. So, I mean, again, this is where it goes back to the urban sprawl. And another thing, too, is unfortunately, with the Crescent Lot and even on Bridge Street, that's all landfill. I mean, what's going to happen? How far do you have to go down to hit bedrock? What's going on? Is there any other kind of contaminated soil there? I mean, because for the years and years, that was the train yard.
There are very few spots in Salem that don't have contaminated soil.
Oh, yeah.
Matter of fact, there's probably no spots in Salem that don't have contaminated soil, just from the power plant and the coal use from years ago.
Oh, yeah, and plus, whatever was actually there, say there might have been a gas station at one point, or there might have been something else, or again, down by the Crescent Lot before they put the train station down there. I remember that as the old railroad yard.
It surely was, yes.
And you could see sometimes you'd have different type of cars there, and so even maybe some engines there too, and they may leak and that sort of thing too. And over the years, because unfortunately, that's what happens. And so that's why on something like, even downtown, you don't want to have it too much of a sprawl, because actually you have a fairly nice view from the actual the bridge that goes in there. You have a fairly nice view of the North River. And since they're going to be cleaning that up, and trying to do a little more green space there, it's nice to be able to, not have to look through a building or walk down and see something too.
Well, I guess we're gonna stick with development here. Question 2 was zoning, but of course that has a lot to do with development. But Ward 2 does encompass most of the B5 or business district, and it's certainly been impacted the most by the development in the city over the last 20 to 25 years. What are your thoughts on what's going on right now with building in downtown Salem, to include stuff recently built, in the process of being built, or proposed projects? Do you think the pace of development in Ward 2 and in the city as a whole can continue the way it's going, or should we ease up on it?
Well, again, I go back, of course, to the smart development. I also go back to the responsible development. If you keep putting more and more and more residences in, where are they going to be able to, unless they include parking, where are they going to park? Another thing too is, you have people down there. You had old Salem businesses that actually got displaced because of, basically people buying it up and pricing them out, pricing the businesses out of competition. I'll give you a good example: Gagnon Shoes. Now, Gagnon Shoes has been there in Salem for 70 years. It used to be up on Essex Street. My father used to go there. My mother used to go there. All my relatives went up there. I remember a few times when I was a young kid, my father had shoes up there, and I'd walk up to Essex Street and pick them up for him. And then after that, once I think they bought the building, they had to move out, and Richie Gagnon, he had to move down next to the fire station. And the thing was, my wife went down there because my mother-in-law had these specialized shoes, and Gagnon Shoes had some of the peripherals that you have to put on the shoes. And also, ask some questions. And I've had to have some questions because of, shoes and things, just to kind of figure out if I needed them or not. Richie was always very forthcoming, never charged or anything like that. He would always talk, give you as much information as possible, and even actually give you more information. So what ended up happening is, what would happen is, unfortunately, I found out that he was moving away, because my wife went down and said, there's a sign on the door. And he went and he moved, and he ended up having to move to Beverly. Now, when I talked to him, he said that, he tried to go to City Hall. He tried to see if there was anything else around. And he said he didn't seem to be able to get as much help as he thought he could get. And he was really trying to stay in Salem. Looking all around, he says things that they were offering, that he was being offered, was either he had to do a lot of his own work inside to do things, or there just wasn't enough space. And I think that's kind of sad, because we should be able to help established Salem businesses stay in here. That's a destination. That's a service industry. That's a destination industry. People could go down, see him.
He's one of the few cobblers. I can't even think of another cobbler on the North Shore.
Oh, no.
I'm sure there is one, but I can't think of it.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm sure that when people went down to see him, say they went to eat somewhere close by, or they may have gone uptown to do some shopping, or they may have gone to the market area.
Hit the farmer's market on a Thursday.
Right,
Sure.
And so therefore, he not only had his own business, but he also got more business for the city in various ways. And that's what you have to do. You have to kind of make sure that everything, you have to have a general mix, and you have to have a good mix of businesses and development. I'm really worried. One thing is, you hear all this stuff about cancel culture. And I know some people saying it's a fad, some people saying it's not. But, if you have historical figures that are being canceled, so to speak, and I understand where they're coming from. I can see both sides of the argument. But say, for example, with the tourism industry, all of a sudden, say, the idea of the witchcraft may be canceled. Or with the sea captains, because of whatever happened that they did in the past.
Oh, the slave trade, sure.
Sure. They could be all of a sudden be canceled. That's why I'm the type of person, and I want to be able to be self-reliant. So, and I hope it doesn't happen, but still, What if it does happen? I want to be able to have enough of a roundabout businesses that so everything could survive. Fine, the tourism takes a hit, but then you have different other service businesses or other businesses that are destination businesses that will be able to come in, and they'll be able to kind of, keep the economy a little bit afloat because, again, in the wintertime, it's very kind of, nobody's really around downtown.
Yeah.
And even when I was working, say, at a bank in the very early 80s, when you had, the mall, you had Elmies and those things, even on a winter's day, there was still plenty of people going out, walking out and about and around.
Oh, absolutely. But you did all your shopping local back then. Not as many people had cars back then.
True.
Cars were bigger, took up a lot more space, but most people, a lot of families didn't have cars. So this ties right into what we've been talking about, development, people coming into town. Ward 2 has, you got Bridge Street and as a major entrance corridor. It's actually two major entrance corridors, Bridge Street and the AO bypass. A lot of traffic coming in on that street. And as far as the downtown goes, multiple entrance corridors all converge downtown to bring traffic in on a daily basis. What are your thoughts on traffic in Salem, what we're doing as a city to try to mitigate it with the changes that we've made, the testing, the experiments that we're doing with various things? Are we handling traffic the right way? Should we handle it more regionally? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I'll have to tell you, one of my jobs when I was in college is I worked at the parking garage. I was mostly working like in the, as a cashier, but then towards the end, I was actually out and about trying to work, to go into the various lots and trying to, move around the city. Now, I know for a fact, like for example, my old paper route was Chestnut Street, Broad Street, Hamilton Street, that area right there. And I will tell you, I do appreciate the new, traffic slowing that they have there, because I'll tell you, over the years, crossing the street, I mean, there's a couple times I almost got clipped, and there are some people who used it as a speedway, and some of them were being jerks, kind of steered towards me, but
so you like the speed bumps?
Well, the speed bumps
and the way that they narrow the
absolutely,
certain
because
sections.
It's a good, that's actually a good thing, because again, from personal experience. But I mean, down the end of the street, the roundabout that they have there, rotary roundabout, depending on British or American version of what do you want to say. The thing is, I've noticed where before it was straight for years, because again, where I've lived there for all my life. And if I wasn't there, I was still in the city of Salem, but I was going back to see my mother, my father, and actually, my mother. And so basically, I would see the traffic flow there. And, in October, it's always backed up, and you know that. And there are certain times of day that's always backed up too. But I'm also saying I'm all for experimentation and trying anything we can to mitigate it. But the problem is, if it doesn't mitigate things, and it makes it worse, then you got to figure something else out or put back what was there before. I mean, again, trying to get around Salem, and all the years I was driving, and I understand that. Because another thing too is, I was a former driving instructor, so did that for 3 years. That was one of my other college jobs, and I could tell by trying to go around the city, and again, bicycles will be the problem. It's good that they're having the bicycle lanes, but don't take up too much of the bicycle lanes, because I can remember way back when you'd have 3 or 4 people on the bike. They'd go right across the lane, and which is of course is illegal, and then they'd give you the dirty look when you were trying to get by. But it's good to have like the bicycle lanes. I mean, again, as I said, there's no new trend for bicycles and doing a little more greener options. But I think on something like that is, sure, I have no problem trying it. If it works, keep it there. If it doesn't, then let's try to figure out something else.
So, again, I've got to stress that your ward with all of the huge B5 part,
Mm-hmm.
2 separate and distinct neighborhoods set apart from each other on either end. What are your priorities for the ward itself? And tie that into what your priorities would be for the city, because whatever you do in your ward affects everybody else.
Sure. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, when I said about what some of the other reasons why I was running, I figured it was infrastructure. Also at the same time, like for the electricity, the water mains. Another thing too is oversight for, say, city city programs like this, they're kind of sponsoring. I'll give you an example. I had put solar power in, and the problem was is the people that were there, and this was back in December 2019 at the Life Center, the Council on Aging, and just the people that were handling this, they just didn't do right. They made me get a Tesla battery, which they didn't realize that I got a three-phase system on my street, in fact, my whole neighborhood, and it didn't work with it. And they were going back and forth, hemming and hawing. And the thing is, I tried to find out if there was anybody in the city. No one was owning it. So, I mean, I'd like to be able, if they have something come in, solarize Salem, but it also solarize Marblehead, solarize Nahat, be able to do that. I called the CEC, and the gentleman at the CEC is like, well, I said, you're violating the contractor code, which they have for them. And the person I was talking to, well, he says, you can't do this. I don't know what can happen. But I said, wait a minute, you got to be able to do what says here that, what your contractor code. And he says, well, you have no real power anyways. And I said, well, really, why don't I run and make this an issue? National Grid, the same thing. Oh, it would cost $100,000 to upgrade things, put a transformer in. And that's on the owner. That's on the property owner. Where I told him straight up, I says, look, if you're not being able to handle this, then how can you handle newer technologies? So, I mean, I did have some success, but again, they can only do so much with the state senator's office to help out. But still, I mean, you've got people. I went around to different people talking about. I mean, we have problems with people coming in encroachment, because they have some sort of entitlement. They try to take over some other people's property. I've had that problem with a couple of my neighbors. So, I mean, you have other things where I went out with my wife since like '82. Now, one of the first things when we went out in the summer, I brought her down to the Salem and Salem PBD council game, for during Heritage Days. And she met all the councilors. I said, listen, if you want, would you like to go sometime to a council meeting? Because she comes from actually a smaller town, Board of Selectmen. She says, yeah. So like in December, we went, school is over. And she's there watching it. Now, another reason is when they were arguing about the e-bikes and the mother-in-law apartments and, the extra, being able to, have more people live in the city if you want to convert there, if you want to convert your house. I was watching it. They're arguing about the e-bikes, and my wife's working on the computer, and all of a sudden she hears how everyone's arguing, and she goes, that never sounded like the council meetings we used to go to. I'm like, yeah, I understand that. And for example, like the e-bikes, we're gonna have to spend like $500,000, but we're not gonna get anything back. Now, when they had the regular bicycles, from what I understand, it was like they spent like say $15,000, but we got $13,000 back. So sure, there's a little bit of a loss, but at least we got a majority of it back. I mean, I feel that we should have situations where if the city doesn't somehow get something back, fine, then be able to do something in kind, or just something, some sort of reciprocation, since we're actually setting up the different setting up different tax incentives, sure, etc. I mean, that's basically this is what I've been hearing from also the people when I've been going around knocking on doors. So, I mean, it's just something that we should be able to do. And, it's been done before, certain things. Sure. So it should be able to do this.
So you touched on how the council comports itself
Yeah.
during the meeting. Observation from your wife that they seemed a little argumentative.
Yeah. Well, not the same, but yeah. But it is.
There's some truth in that.
Yeah.
So how important do you feel it is for all 11 members of the council to be able to work together, speak together, argue politely with each other,
Mm-hmm. Sure,
in a civil manner, as opposed to becoming angry with each other? And this is inclusive of communications to the mayor's office and communications coming from the mayor's office. Is there enough consideration of each other there, or not?
Well, I think, like I said years ago, basically everyone actually came from the city when they were on there, and everybody knew everybody else, or they knew relatives or some, everybody it was a smaller city. Sure, you have new people coming in, which is good because sometimes you do need a difference of opinion to kind of maybe get some other things going. But on the whole, you should be able to get along effectively and talk effectively, be able to, get legislation moving, You should also be able to get it so that people can, talk to the mayor. I mean, I tried talking to the mayor myself when I was running, and I ended up and long story short, I had to go through the chief of staff to get a phone conversation with her rather than actually seeing her in person. And when I called her, and I mean, years ago, I would do things like to have her, she went to college with myself and my wife. And I'd come in and I'd say, okay, since I've been pretty much doing all the political process for a long time in the city, I'd walk in, I'd say, okay, this happened in 1977, something similar. They did this, and this, you may want to help. Do you want to do it this way? You might have to adapt it. 1983, or if I saw something, I'm like, look, you may want to check something out because this doesn't look right. But I mean, to not even being able to see her, and the thing was, is when I called up for the phone appointment, she had people in her office already. So I mean, something like that, actually that's actually selective enforcement. I mean, unless it's actually on the actual webpage saying this is what you have to do to see the mayor, then again it becomes selective enforcement. And I know other people were able to walk in with no problem because I've heard them say that. I've also heard from other people. But I mean, it's very, very important for the council to get along and also make sure legislation gets out. Like the example is when they had the 1,900 people sign for the protection of the wetlands, and it wasn't even coming out of the OLA Office of the Licenses and Legal Affairs. I mean, as a chairperson, you can't do that. That's a mandate from the people. You have to be able to, figure it out, send it to the council, send it to the planning department, or wherever it has to go. And you have to, because again, that's actually a violation of the oath of office. I mean, you can go to the Division of Public Integrity for that, and you can also go to the Ethics Commission for that too. I mean, fine, you don't like it, or it's not. Somehow it's not liked, but still, you can't hold it and let it die. That's what happened. The same thing with the sales tax going down, when everyone overwhelmingly voted for it, and Sal DeMacy and the rest of them said that they weren't going to do it, and there should be some sort of recall provision on that too.
That still hasn't been done, I don't believe.
So,
all right, Jim. Time's just about up.
oh, okay.
I appreciate you being here.
I
wish you luck in September, and if you get through September, we're going to have you back here sometime, probably in early October maybe, and let you speak a little more to the folks of Salem. That's it, guys. We are here with Jim Zavaglia running for Ward 2. He's on the primary ballot or the preliminary ballot on the 14th of September. Please vote, guys. Your vote's your voice. We're all asking you to vote. I know I'm going to. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll talk to you later with another candidate soon.